Jace here from Team Dark Strategies. We are headed into another unboxing video. Today we have the Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Knights Army set. Now this is the big box. This is the all-in box essentially, where you get the big knight, the two war dogs, the Codex, and the cards. So John, team member of Dark Strategies, John, he purchased this up, received it in, and was nice enough to give the copy to me to do an unboxing video. So like in any unboxing video, we'll pop it open, we'll check out the contents, we'll look through the Codex, look through the cards, and then John will take it back, build it up, and then we can talk about how John has built each of the knights as far as the loadouts go. And then we'll get into some battles with it once he has them painted. I'm looking forward to playing against some Chaos Knights. Always a tough battle as far as just attrition goes, because they are usually pretty tough. But I also have an Imperial Knight army in the works. I have 4 War Dogs and 1 Knight Errant already done. So we have enough to get at least 1,000 points of Knight versus Knight action in the near future. So that's exciting in its own right. So let's get into the unboxing here. Now the box itself, unfortunately, the plastic is already off. I know that's the best part of unboxing videos, but you can kind of see from in the shipping, it got damaged. Creases and holes in the box, so the plastic actually was kind of falling off already. Anyways, the box itself, right on the front, you have the Knight, what's it called? The Knight Abominant. That's the big guy there. Full color beauty shot of him. And then on the back side, the ingredients of the box essentially. So the Abominant, the 2 War Dogs, and then the Codex and the cards are included as well. And then there looks like there's a kind of setup dioramic scene of knights fighting ultramarines. Oh boy. So that is the box itself. Let's pop this open and see what's inside. So we have the cover. We'll put that over there so we can enjoy it. Yeah, so most of these big boxes do have these kind of cover pages of the art itself. So look at that, full color. Bummer it has some holes in it from the shipping, but maybe you can take a Sharpie to that and kind of cover it up. But these are great to frame if you have a studio or wherever in your house, a wall dedicated to Warhammer art. These are great to frame and put out there. So, and it looks like it's 2-sided. Same artwork on both sides, but that's pretty. So let's put that over there. All right, so at the contents of the box, basically sprues, right? Looks actually a lot of sprues going on here. The first 2 are the War Dog sprues. Looks like identical War Dog sprues. These look really cool, the head options and all that kind of stuff. So again, we'll see how John builds those. So that's 2 War Dogs. And then we look like we have the weapon options and the feet and the arms. Again, identical sprues. So that's 4 sprues total already. Just gonna put those out there. And then we get into the Abominant himself. The big parts, you got the carapace pieces here. That looks like that's just one sheet in its own right. And we'll also talk about, what to build in sub-assemblies if you like doing that when you paint. Knights, I remember when building the Imperial Knights, doing the legs as assembly and then the body as assembly, just easier to paint. But we'll see if it's very similar. And then, here we got the weapon. Look at those huge chain swords. It's like 3 Space Marines tall chain sword. That's pretty awesome. So that's a unique sprue. And then we get the legs. Looks like there's some chains and some banners, head options. The skull options are pretty sweet too. So that is another original. And then lastly, we do have, looks like more weapon options, and then I don't know what they're exactly called, but the tentacle arms, flail of some sort, that's on that arm option sprue. So ultimately you get 2, 4, 6, 8 sprues of models worth of stuff. So that's cool. Never seen blank pieces of paper. It must just be a cover thing. So that's kind of different. And then we have the beautiful Codex. This one all wrapped in plastic, and then on the back side you have the instructions here to do the different build variants. So we'll pop that open. We'll look through the Codex, look at the stats a little bit, and look at the instructions again to see how they do sub-assemblies for that. So I'll put that over here. And then we have, it looks like 2 transfer sheets. 1 large transfer sheet with a whole bunch of options as far as, I'm sure, the different Chaos houses, symbols. And then we have a smaller sheet, similar Knight houses as well, but smaller ones, probably for the War Dogs or, you know, smaller areas from arms and pauldrons. And then, of course, we have the big base sizes. The base sizes are the same as the Imperial Knights, oval shapes, and then the quite large armiger ones, so, or not armigers, the War Dogs. So that is that for bases. And then last but not least, we have the data cards. So again, we'll pop these open, look at the stratagem, see if there's some cool, at least what I can tell as far as cool stratagems involved in that. So that will be another part of the video. So that essentially is the unboxing. And then inside there's just actually I've never seen that in a box like this, but a plastic underlay to keep everything, I guess, from not slipping around. So that is the contents. Pretty excited again to see how John builds these up. But let's get into the Codex, let's get into the cards next, and then we'll get into the Knights themselves. All right, so we have finished these Knights. John took them back and assembled them. So we're going to get into the actual build of this and how, you know, John felt about it. Kind of did a little interview with him just to see his initial thoughts of the build, what was included as far as the bits go, and then overall essential just detail of the model. So when talking to John, kind of a flyby recap of it, it's a great model build for all three of these models. The detail is what you expect from Games Workshop. There's just a high amount of awesomeness lavished onto these models, both just the Knight structure and then the Chaos kind of accoutrements of detailing it out. So that is pretty cool. What could we build? Now, John, you can see some of these pieces are not completely assembled yet. John particularly likes to magnetize. There are a lot of people that magnetize. I magnetize weapon options as well. It just offers you some versatility as far as, you know, trying things out, especially early on in a codex that you might read it and on page it looks really good, but then once you actually play it, you're kind of meh about it. And then if you glued it on, you're kind of just stuck with it. So magnetizing does give you that ability to test run builds. You know, more time involved with magnetizing things, but if you can kind of get into, you know, practice magnetizing things, it goes pretty quick. So these are being prepared to be magnetized. They're not all completely magnetized at the moment, but they're essentially stuck on for video purposes. So let's start with the War Dogs themselves. These two right here, the smaller guys, basically the Chaos versions of the Armigers, right? Which I'm currently building. So the Armigers, what can you build from them? We're talking about John. I was very pleased actually when he stated that in this box set you can build 3 of the different variants of War Dogs. You have the War Dog Carnivore, you have the War Dog Brigand, and then you have the War Dog Stalker. And each of them have their own weapon options, right? Surprisingly enough, each sprue, you can make each of those for each of your 2 War Dogs. So you can pick all of the options, especially if you're magnetizing, you can essentially build all of these options. And then, like I said, later on, pick what you're gonna try it out. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, you can swap it out, unmagnetize them, and put them on. So all of the bits that you need to make these 3 for each of these are included in the set, which is fantastic. You know, not all, but you know, some sets wouldn't give you that option to build it. They might give you, you know, one option here, one option there, and you're kind of just stuck with it in these box sets. But great on GW for providing that. I think that is a really fantastic. One, probably just in the creation of the molds of the sprues, it just made sense to put them all on each sheet. So yeah, that's exciting. So John, as you can see here, has the 4 weapon options for each. He's going to magnetize those on, pop those on the arms, and he's ready to go and try these out in some test games that we'll hopefully be getting shortly on the channel as we paint these up. Another thing about what's included. Now, I left this sheet out here this is the abominate sprue for the weapons. There are also other knight weapons on here. The abominate kind of is stuck with what it is, but if you had other knights, if you're starting to collect other other chaos knights, you have these weapon options on here that you could build, magnetize, and put them on your other guys, and you're good to go, right? So that, I think, is another fantastic thing. And even if you're not, if you're looking for terrain, kind of just scatter terrain, these big guns, glue them together, put some paint on it, rust them up a little bit, and just throw them around the battlefield. It looks like scattered debris. I absolutely love it, especially on the orc board, because orcs accrue all that good loot from the battlefield. So even if you're not going to use a lot of the stuff on the sprues, if you're looking for terrain, scatter terrain, this would be great scatter terrain. So that's essentially it for the what you can build with it. You can see the big Knight Abominate here. It has its weapon options already kind of built in to the Codex. There isn't many, actually I don't think there is weapon options that you can switch out. No, so the Abominate is stuck with the Heavy Stubber, the Volkite Combustor, the Bale Mace, the Electro Scourge, and the Titanic Feet. And there's really no options to switch any of that out. So the Knight Abominate makes life simple for you. You can kind of just go with it. I think John is still going to magnetize bits here. He obviously, when magnetizing, he has the legs separate just for painting purposes and storage and transporting. But he also put big magnets in the arms, so he can switch things out as he goes along if he so chooses, right? So let's get the camera, flip it around. We're going to look at the knights up close and personal. Again, not all the parts are on these things, but we'll show scale to other Imperial knights, so if there's any differences. And then we'll put some other models around them just to show scale if you're not familiar with the knight scale. And then we'll talk a little bit about the rules. Now, I'm not a hardcore Chaos Knight player, but I did read through, the Codex of at least these three. And we'll talk about what I think in our meta, our kind of mini meta here on Dark Strategies. So we'll talk about what I think will work, and then maybe go through some of the stratagems too. So not all of them. We're not going to go card by card or page by page by any means, but we'll hit upon things that I think are useful, at least in our meta again. So let's get to the detail shot. Let's pan down here and look at the knights a little bit more up close and personal, and look at the parts themselves, just to look at the detail, and then we're gonna talk about sizing. So let's start with the War Dogs first. Here's the chassis. Again, nothing's really attached to them other than the torso and the legs. For ease of painting, I do suggest even if you don't magnetize the two parts, but I do suggest leaving those two parts separately, just so you can get your dry brush is a lot easier. I think it was Duncan Rhodes that first did the painting tutorial on the GW site when the Knights first came out, the Imperial ones, and it was all about dry brushing that under chassis and then lavishing on the details with the armor panels. So I do think either way, leave them as two separate parts, personal opinion, but it might help you paint those up. But the chassis themselves, they're typical, the armature size. We're going to look at that shortly for sizing, but the details are pretty fantastic as far as all those pistons and robotic leg details. And then on the top chassis parts, you got the chaos chains, and then this isn't with the added guns on it or even spikes that you can add. As I look down here at the parts, we mentioned that these are all going to be magnetized options, which gives you those abilities to build all three of those. Absolutely fantastic. You do get head options. I think John picked these, the skull ones, to go with that. The top mount, the missile launcher, and then the stubber. You don't even have to glue those in. Those actually have pegs on their little feet, so you can peg those in. You don't even have to magnetize those. And then, once these are the leg panels, once they're dry brushed, John will glue on these pieces as with the loincloth. So that's that. Let's look at an armature model next to a Chaos Knight model. Now I'm working on, these are primed black currently, but I'm working on my Imperial Army right now. So you can see the similarities. They are essentially the same chassis, which kind of makes sense, you know, because they kind of originated in the Imperium and then got chaosified, if that's a word. But the chassis has changed. I mean, you can see the armament panels are starting to, you know, they're modified. There's a lot of external piping going on. So yeah, the legs, you know, leg positions seem very similar. The foot pads have changed into claws because why not? It's chaos. And then as does the kind of smoke pipes. We have smoke pipes here. So that's size-wise for the War Dogs. I'm gonna put a little figure next to it. If you're not familiar with the size there, there's a Primaris Lieutenant. So you can kind of see the size of the build. So that will be exciting. And then the, you know, the foot pads, the base circles are the same size as the Imperial ones. So let's get to the Knight Abominant. This big boy right here. You can kind of see how that's going to look. I'm not sure what colors John is going to paint these up. He does have a Chaos Knight already. So yeah, but look at that thing. That's absolutely gorgeous detail. Again, all the arms are built. The face is kind of exposed here. There are face options with more of an armored face if you choose that. But spikes and all that chaosy goodness. Exposed piping. Oh, look at that big gun. And then on the back side, I'm going to actually pull this off again. This is going to be set up to be magnetized. So we'll put that there. And then these actually come off. These are actually good not to glue on as well, the shoulder pads, just because they're so large. Usually they have more painting involved and then the decal work, but it allows you to get into, you know, painting the arms, dry brushing that metal if you're going for that look. So that's another part to leave off. And then the feet itself, I'm just going to spin this around. It's kind of cool. It's got like a Tyrannosaurus Rex tail going on for stability and weapon usage. So yeah, that is pretty cool. The legs themselves, you can kind of see, compare the two here. They're kind of jointed, I guess more like a bird. You know, I don't know the right terminology for that, but if you look at the Imperial Knight, the legs aren't jointed like that. So it has a much more chaosy feel to that stance, in my opinion. And it kind of leans over a little bit more than the Chaos Knight. The Imperial Knight, I mean, is more kind of straight up and down, you know, knightly posture. So let me put this back on, and then we'll show scale of the Imperial Knight with the Chaos Knight, just to show there's not too much of a size difference here. So there you have it. Very similar. Even with that leg, you know, crooked leg, it still is hunched over, so it actually matches up perfectly to that, you know, Imperial Knight. And then there's going to be smoke snacks up here, very similar to these, but just a little more chaos. John's going to leave that off as well for painting purposes. So that is that. And then let's put the Lieutenant over there just for sizing. Big and ready for action. I mean, that thing is scary. If that thing's bearing down you on the battlefield, you better hope you have some high AP weapons to deal with it, because if you don't, bad things will happen. So that is it for the models themselves. Hopefully that provided you with scale questions or detail questions, or even just how we built them questions. So I'm going to page through the Codex now with you, go through some of the stats that I think are pretty cool, and then we'll wrap this one up as far as the Chaos Knight review. All right, so we saw the detail of the knights, how they're built. Let's get into the Codex a little bit. Now we're going to do a page by page. Granted, there's not a huge amount of pages here to knights, but we're going to go through what I think is good as far as weapons of each of these, talk a little bit about each of the different war dogs, and then just talk a little bit about the Dark Strategies meta, our little kind of mini meta of what we play. You know, as far as the armies we play, I mean, we have a wide variety of close combat armies with, you know, orcs, we have Necrons, Shooty, Tyranids, everything. But so essentially, there is, and even just in our mini meta, we're going to talk about what I think would be a good build, or strategies around these knights. And then since they will all be magnetized, we can try each of them out, and John can have fun picking what he likes to play best with these. But let's talk about the war dogs themselves. We have the 3 different variants that we've already kind of went over. You can build each of these variants on these 2 models if you so choose. So the first one here in the Codex is the War Dog Stalker. Stalker, to me, just the name alone, is more of a scout unit. So let's see what it has. It has the Avenger Chain Cannon, the multi-launcher, and the Slaughter Claw. So yeah, the way I'm seeing it, it is more of a scout unit that gets out onto maybe side objectives, maybe stays back on its home objective, but it has the ability to deal with anti-infantry. It's not an armor puncher by any means, unless it gets into combat. But the Avenger Chain Cannon is an Assault 12 gun, 36-inch range, so you have some range, especially in these smaller, battlefield setups, and Strength 6 AP2. So, and it's damage 1. So again, it's not ripping apart armor, but it should be able to gun down infantry pretty good with 12 shots. The multi-launcher, I think on all of these, you can choose to have that. You can switch it out with the heavy stubber. It depends on what you're facing, I guess, but to me, heavy stubber and multi-launcher are anti-infantry as well, so pick either one you like, essentially. The Slaughter Claw, again, it is a close combat. It does D3 plus 3 damage, so that is absolutely awesome. So that could rip apart armor if you wanted to use it to get out there, maybe complement some of these more close combat-y stuff. But again, maybe keep them back and use them as a counter assault unit. If somebody's coming in at you, you can deal with it themselves, essentially. So I view the Stalker as a scout unit, kind of versatile all around, good guy when it comes to guns, close combat, but not necessarily anti-armor. The Carnivore, to me, the Carnivore name here is all about close combat. I would think it all has it. It has the multi-launcher on the top mount here, so that's anti-infantry, but you have the Reaper Chain Talon and the Slaughter Claw. Yeah, so this is a tooled up guy for assault. Get him out there, as soon as you can. Maybe surround objectives that are key to winning for points. But he's all about close combat. He can deal with, with the Slaughter Claw itself. He can deal with other dreadnoughts. He can deal with monstrous creatures. But he also has the Reaper Chain Talon, which you have that option of a sweep attack, which is anti-infantry. Or the strike, the big strike. All these, he's coming with 5 attacks, so that's actually pretty good. With the sweep attack, it's 2 hit rolls instead of 1. So there is the anti-infantry, but that big strike is 3 damage. So that's awesome. Adds +4 to your strength, -4 AP. So he is anti-assault. He loves to get stuck in. So the Carnivore, pretty cool. The Brigand, I would think. So we have kind of an all-around guy, a close combat guy. The Brigand will be the shooter, right? He's essentially, he has the multi-launcher, of course. He's got the Avenger Chain Cannon, which is that anti-infantry 12 shots. But the big one here is the Demon Breath Spear, which is almost like a las cannon mixed in with a multi-melta. So at range 30, not a huge range, but not horrible. 2 shots, strength 9. -4, and it does D6 damage, but if you're within half range, it does D6 +2. So D6, that's a little swingy. Even D6 +2 can be swingy. D6 +2. I suppose. That would. I don't trust in my dice rolls all the time, so that one could be detrimental, I think, to strategies. You could be let down by that guy, but if he's within half range, he's at least doing 3 damage. On average, I guess he's probably doing 6 damage, 5 or 6 damage. So that's not a bad average. So he's the shooty guy, the Brigand. So what would I choose? I guess it depends what you're playing. You can bring each of these, 1 to 3 in a unit, which I think is fantastic. In bigger games, I think you're going to want to bring at least 2 in a unit, maybe even 3 in a unit. I mean, just just the footprint alone, you could surround objectives. I mean, if you had 3 carnivores in a squad, basically the opponent's going to have to deal with 3 close combat beasts. Same thing with the Stalker, same thing with the Brigand. If you bring them in units and you use them to spread out on objectives, you can really screen off a large area. Possibilities there. I think I might go with a mix. I might go with the Carnivore, and I would probably go with the Stalker. The Brigand, if you're not going big shooty on some of these big stuff, maybe the Brigand, you switch out, the Stalker with the Brigand, to get the more shots in. Possibility, but I like the Carnivore actually. Maybe just because I'm an Orc player and a Demon player, and I mean, even Grey Knights are kind of close combating too. But the Carnivore seems like a great addition to a force that, they're moving 14 inches. They can get out there. They can get on objectives. Yes, they're not going to shoot much early on, but if they can tie up a 14-inch move, is going to bring you out past the halfway mark, on no man's land games, especially in 1,000-point games. You should be getting into an opponent. If you can survive that first round, shoot, if you can use terrain to your advantage, I think the Carnivores are going to be fun. But if you're going against a lot of infantry, go with Stalkers. If you're going for a shooty army, go with the Brigand. So that's that for War Dogs. In our metas, like I said, Carnivore and then a mix of either Stalker or Brigand. That's how I would kind of play it. But let's talk about the big guy himself. This is the Knight Abominant. He's got toughness 8, 24 wounds. That is a lot of wounds. As most, a lot of knights have high wounds. But his guns, again, he doesn't have gun options here. The Abominant is the Abominant essentially when it comes to just making him. But he has a heavy stubber, a Volkite combustor, a bale mace, an electro scourge, and then of course his titanic feet. So let's go over the stubber. The stubber again is anti-infantry. The stubbers are just there for extra shots. The Volkite combustor, range 30 again, so not a huge range, but not a bad range either. It's heavy 6 shots here, strength 10, -1, 3 damage straight. Absolutely love anything that's just straight damage. You're not rolling that dice. And then each time an attack is made with his weapon, an unmodified wound roll 6 inflicts 3 mortal wounds on the target in addition to any normal damage. So I absolutely love that gun. I mean, you're doing mortal wound damage, you're doing just straight 3 damage, and it's strength 10. It's only -1, that's kind of its downfall. But if you can get those damages through, maybe roll some 6s to wound, that thing's gonna go off and really destroy some things. Now, let's get into the combat stuff. The Bale Mace, -2 straight damage. Each time the bear fight, it makes D3 additional attacks with this weapon. So it's a random roll there, but it's not gonna hurt. He does have just a base 3 attack. So that, it could be good, it could be bad on that. That is a little swingy as far as back and forth. The Electro Scourge, -2 straight 3 damage, make 3 hit rolls instead of 1. That's, I think, where you get into the good stuff here. That's a lot of attacks. That's a lot of straight 3 damage. I mean, you're going to be wiping up Terminators, most elite categories that have multi-wound models. You should be wiping them up. They are -2, so, not amazing, against Imperial units to be -1. So, Space Marines, in Sisters of Battle. So, yeah, it's still going to do damage, though, and it's still, I think, designed with a Strength 8 base. You still can rip open, rhinos or transports. You can deal with close combat Death Dreads or, Dreadnoughts. I think that's the way to go here with Electro Skirt. And then if you need to, Titanic Feet, why not? So yeah, and he's a Psyker. So the Psyker thing, it allows knights to inflict additional mortal wounds. You're not skipping that stage where some armies, if you don't take Psykers, or some armies just don't have good Psyker options. This just allows you the ability to smite, if anything. But then there's a plethora of psychic powers to choose from. I'm not going to get into the psychic powers themselves, but I think that's just another added benefit to the Knight Abominant. we'll see if people use them. John's obviously going to use them in our battles here. I would stay away from them, essentially in close combat, that's for sure. I personally would probably want to shoot this from a distance, but again, with a 10-inch move, he can get up onto a center objective or a no man's land objective and sit there and say, come at me. So Knight Abominates, I think, are pretty cool, and they obviously look cool on the battlefield themselves. So that's my kind of take, just going through it kind of fast, not fully in detail, but in our meta, that's what I think would be beneficial. I do think this army is going to be pretty strong against certain armies that I field. They're going to struggle against these Chaos Knights. Against some other armies, I might feel a little bit more, not an easy win, but I might feel a little bit more confident with some shooty armies against these things. But there it comes down to, the ion shields, and then, the way the dice roll. And then how many you can bring down earlier on in the game, and then get yourself out on objectives. So Knight battles, I'm not an expert in any of the Knight battles thus far. I just use one every once in a while for kind of backup. But myself, I don't have a Knight army yet. So this will be a learning experience for John and I and Chris as he faces these further in the future. So as far as some of the stratagems go, I just pulled a few of them out. I mean, the Tyrannical Court, where you can make, Chaos Knight's model and make him a character. The Corrupted Heirlooms, where you get relics, and then the Warlord traits. Now, in the new Nephilim edition that's coming out, with the reduced amount, and then they're forcing you to pay CP. These 3 cards, I think, for any Codex where you're paying extra for Warlord traits, relics, and all that kind of stuff, will be detrimental. You probably won't see, unless it's truly worth, there's some relics in there that you truly want to have in your army. You'll have to make that decision if you're going to spend those CP early on. Some armies, I think you'll want to spend CP. For orcs, for instance, I personally don't think there's a lot of good stratagems in the orc deck. Essentially, there's some good ones in there, but not a plethora of them. So I'm okay with spending Warlord trait points and relic points to get, to kill a claw and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, we're not talking about orcs, we're talking about knights. Hunting Hounds is one I pulled from the deck here. It is only 1 command point, and it allows a War Dog class model from your army that is within 6 inches away from any enemy models and within 6 inches of a battlefield. If you're using strategic reserves in the mission, place those models into strategic reserves. Those models cannot arrive from strategic reserves in the same turn it was placed. So it allows you to take off a War Dog unit and then maybe come back on somewhere else. That, I think, is very key, especially to an army that doesn't have a lot of models. In an ever-shifting battlefield sometimes, especially against fast armies, you might go left flank, and then all of a sudden you say, oh shoot, I need to be on the right flank. You can get off and then come back on. That, I think, for 1 point is very good for Hunting Hounds, especially for the War Dogs. Wraith Surge, use this stratagem in the opponent's psychic phase. When a psychic test is taken for a psyker failed within 18 inches, the Chaos Knight's Khorne model from your army, that psyker unit suffers Perils of War. So this is Khorne only, but I play Khorne. It would, suffering Perils of the Warp is a good thing because it's additional. Any mortal wounds, I think, in 9th edition is beneficial because it's wounds in a phase that you don't normally get. So that's not a bad one for 1 point. For 2 points, Harrying Hunter. This is for a War Dog class model from an army. That model is eligible to shoot and charge even if it fell back. So it's a pretty basic stratagem, but for 2 points, in certain instances where you're tied up and you need to, say somebody charges your anti-infantry War Dog or even your big gun War Dog, and they're trying to tie them up, you could fall back, shoot, and then, that alone I think is worth 2 points in some instances in a battle. And again, especially in a low army model count, if you're tied up for most of the game, it's just not fun. You got to get out and shoot, especially if you're choosing shooty options. So that, I think, is worth the 2 points. And then last but not least, the Diabolic Bulwark. This is a 1 to 2 command points, but essentially Use it in your opponent's shooting phase. When a Chaos Knights model from your army is selected as the target of a ranged attack, until the end of the phase, that model has a 4+ invul save against ranged attacks. If that model is a War Dog, it costs 1 CP. If it's otherwise, it costs 2 CP. So having a 4+ invulnerable save gives you that 50-50 opportunity to survive a really bad shooting phase. It doesn't guarantee you're going to survive it, but it gives you that ability to survive it. Because there are a lot of weapons out there, looking at you, Tau, looking at you, Tyranids, that are going to want to one-shot something big, if they're facing knights or multiple small, and really cripple you first turn. This one will allow you at least a fighting chance if you're stuck out in the open or there's not a lot of terrain, because these guys are big. Not so much on these, but even they're pretty tall. If you're not on a field with a lot of terrain, a lot of tall terrain, you're gonna want to use a 4+ invul save when you can get it. So 1 CP or 2 CP, I think it's probably worth it turn 2 or turn 1 or even turn 2 to spend that, make that investment, and go forth. So that's the review on the Chaos Knights army set. If you're on the fence about buying Chaos Knights, the benefits and the negatives to playing Chaos Knights, I think, are kind of hand in hand. It all depends on the person that wants to, or that is intrigued to buy this one. It is low model count, so on the positive side, you don't have to build as much, you don't have to paint as much, and you're ready to field an army pretty fast. But on the flip side, it is a low model count, so you have to deal a little bit more tactically, because you're not having mass amounts of troops or units that can spread out on a battlefield and claim objectives and do all the working parts that 9th edition kind of makes you do to win a game. Because it is not all about killing your opponent. It is an objective-based game while killing your opponent. So it's a good, and it can be a bad. I think GW is working through ways to make Knights a little bit more playable. I think people have learned how to play Knights. I'm not going to tell you how to, but I'm a kind of a proponent to, if you're going to select an army, build it, paint it, and then test it out. Enjoy the test games. They could be frustrating, but even if you lose horribly, learn something from it. So I would, if you're anything intrigued about Knights, and you didn't want the Imperial Knights and you want a little bit more chaos, kind of the darker look to this stuff, this is a great box set, the Chaos Knight army set. You're all in, you're ready to go, at least on a couple of small battles, and you add a couple more War Dogs or even another bigger Knight, and you're into the 1,500, 2,000 point stuff. So I'm all for it. The box set includes the Codex, the cards, the stratagems, all of the different builds that you need to make for War Dogs, and then the beautiful Abominant. I highly recommend it if you're interested in Chaos Knights, and I am very excited once John finishes magnetizing these and gets some paint on them. We're going to have a kind of blast off battle report of Knights and Knights. I got to get going on my Imperial Knights and see what I can do to counter some Chaos Knights. So that should be a very fun battle report in the near future, hopefully. So yeah, that's the unboxing video. Let's get into the next one. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you've been enjoying these videos thus far. I do enjoy doing unboxing and doing a little bit more in-depth reviews on just the models, the product itself. So we're looking to get a few more of these kind of unboxing videos, these reviews going on the channel. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.